here today with Susan Faw, whose website has the most wonderful collection of book covers, just saying. Uh, Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on at the moment.
Well, I am a young adult fantasy author living in Canada. My current book of choice is a continuation of my Dragon series. The book is entitled Heart of Fjord, would be book 4 in that series. And it's about dragons and genies and triad merges.
So, like all of the fun things that fantasy has, yeah.
Exactly. If it can go wild, that's where I want to go.
All right, so we'd better start then, if you're on book 4, we'd better start at the beginning so that we know what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yes, so the series is called The Heart of the Citadel, and the premise of the whole series is there are 10 young women who are given special pendants, crystal hearts, which indicate their special abilities with magic. They also have a male counterpart. Sometimes this is a sibling, sometimes a cousin, sometimes just another person who is in their village or in their area. These 20 young people have the ability to change the world. And there is an evil emperor who takes over the world and is trying to control the flow of magic within the world. So in a desperate attempt to wipe out these young people, he embarks on a great purge, and the 10 young women are actually rescued by dragons before the emperor can get to them, but the men aren't quite so lucky.
Oh.
So they are flown to an island called Gentessa, which is the home of the Genies. And there they're taught how to merge their magic with the magic of their genie counterpart and a dragon that is specially suited to them. And then they're each sent back to their home province and are tasked with freeing their province from the grip of the emperor. So each book in the series beyond the first book is that particular woman's journey back to free her homeland.
Very cool. Now, do all of these journeys come together at the end, or is it just...
Yes, because you always have to have the ultimate plot twist at the end, right? So obviously not going to tell you what that is, but yes. So the books are actually happening at the same time. So they're all consecutive.
Oh, wow. Okay. That one is tricky, isn't it?
It can be tricky because there are characters that cross between all the books.
Oh, dear.
So you have to kind of have your timeline in mind as you're writing.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not very good at that. So I'm impressed that you can keep all of that together. Do you have some sort of like magical timeline on your wall that tells you precisely when who needs to be where and what time tea is and all of that?
No, not exactly, because the characters actually, beyond a few special characters, don't interact with each other on their quests.
Oh, I see.
So there are a few characters that are crossing between provinces, but that's part of the world, is that the magical barriers that the emperor has erected keep the people separated from each other. So the only way that the provinces can interact is via the central citadel, which is the heart of the citadel.
That explains why no one has yet overthrown the guy.
Right, because they all have to come through the center, which he controls.
Right.
So, so it's an interesting task for me as I bring these girls home. How are they getting past the barrier that's in place to actually access their homelands? So it's fun. It's like trying to jailbreak every book.
Oh yeah. Eventually you have to get super creative. It's great fun.
Yeah.
I like it. So why Genies?
I always thought genies were an underserved magical population.
Yeah.
The only time you really see them is more in romantic fiction, right? Urban fantasy or something like that, right? But there's just not a lot of genie genre fiction out there, I find. So I thought it'd be fun to incorporate it with the dragons. My genies, obviously genies are shapeshifters. So it seems to be a nice way to blend that into our world. So
Fun. What fun. And of course dragons being,
of course
dragons.
Yes, my dragons actually eat gemstones.
Oh.
That's their food source.
Oh, that's nice.
So their hoarding of gemstones makes sense because it's actually their food.
Got it. Instead of having to go out and, all of the sheep and all of the cows and that weird sacrificial maiden you see in some stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, gemstones. What fun. Okay, so book 4. I would love to ask for details, but I feel like spoilers would be problematic. So,
Each world that the girls come back to are actually microcosms of the real world.
Oh.
So you could take any particular book. Heart of Fjord is going to be very much a Norwegian, Swedish kind of feel to it. When I'm working within those particular areas of the world, is as far as my inspiration, then I start pulling from their mythologies too. So so each book is really a microcosm of a section of our own Earth.
Oh, interesting. And how do you fit mythologies into all of the other problems that they're having?
Well, they each have their own monsters basically that exist within their province that are unique to their world. So, sometimes those are good creatures, sometimes those are not so great creatures. So the current one will have a lot of trolls that I work into it too.
That'll work.
It's fun because it's fun to research, to go in through and see the different mythologies that are across our planet. And it's just fun to explore those when you're writing these kind of books.
Which ones are you going to explore?
There's actually in Norwegian myth, there's actually 3 different types of trolls. I don't know if you remember watching Merlin when the series was out, the BBC series, but there is one there where Uther is enchanted by a troll.
Yes,
and it wasn't until I started. Do you remember that one? Right, she becomes queen. Okay, so that's a funny episode. But the thing is that her assistant there, Jonas, is actually another type of troll, and I didn't realize that until I actually started researching for this book. That he's actually a troll too. So, it's kind of interesting to see how. What clued me into the fact that he was a troll was the tail. Because I always wondered, what kind of creature is Jonas? He has this green tail, But it turns out it's a troll myth. Usually female, but yeah.
Huh. Yeah. Okay, so you've got Norwegian mythology, which is fascinating, great fun, and slightly destructive. And so other mythology systems, if you've got different enclaves, is this like going for Greek, Egyptian, that sort of a thing?
Yeah, well, Heart of Shadra takes more of a Native American feel to it. You can even see that on the cover. I think I tried to capture that kind of a concept. But it's very much about the elders and the prayers of the people and how that interacts in their philosophy of their world, set in a tundra type setting, right? So a lot of the creatures that you'd see in tundras. And while Heart of Tyr is more, I'd say almost North American, that one I kind of kept, to the basic roots. I've got ones coming up that will be Japanese inspired. There's one there that is going to definitely be African, like Africa continent kind of. Yeah. So it'll be fun when I start digging into those philosophies to see what's there.
And what does your research look like?
I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of reading for each book. I really want to know in my heart, what I think this creature is all about, and what might
Mm-hmm.
motivate it, and why it would react the way it would when we finally do encounter it.
Right.
I blend a lot of elemental magic into it too. So fire, ice, earth, wind. So there are creatures that end up, transforming because the magic is unstable now in the world because of the emperor's, purging and that. So we have breakout scenarios, kind of like the coronavirus that's going on right now.
Yeah.
We have outbreaks
where
creatures change, they actually physically change and infect. And so
oops.
It's fun. Oops.
Yeah, sounds like huge amounts of trouble. Now, is this your only series?
No, I have a series that I originally wrote back in 2016 when I first started writing. That one is a mythology-based young adult fantasy called the Spirit Shield Saga. And it is a story that covers the interactions of 4 sibling demigods and their purpose. Basically, they're battling for control of the souls of the dead.
Well, I mean, they're siblings, so...
They're siblings. They're siblings that don't get along.
Yeah, that sounds pretty normal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they get dumped by the gods, and, each is struggling to take control of the world. But it's at its heart, it's a reincarnation story. It's
interesting.
I've always been a big Wheel of Time fan, so I like stories that run in circles.
Yes.
What's been before will come again, kind of thing. So that's kind of was my interpretation of a cyclical type of story. But it's done well. It's won some awards along the way, so it's
very exciting.
Yeah, it's been good.
Very fun. Okay, and you have 6 more books left in your current series, if I understand correctly?
Yes, it's going to be 10 plus a book either end, so 12, and depending on where I'm at that point, maybe that last book gets split into 2. We'll see.
Yeah.
See how much we have to wrap up, right?
Yeah. How many threads you have to unravel, and the plot holes
bring together.
I know that feeling well. Alrighty, moving a little bit sideways. Is there an author in your genre that you would like to steal their abilities?
As far as their creative or writing abilities?
Yes. Although marketing was always something to steal.
I've always been a huge Harry Potter fan. J.K. Rowling is just someone I felt a kinship with. If you had the choice of who you would sit down and have tea with anywhere in the world, unless you kind of your dying wish, it would be J.K. Rowling for me.
Right.
The way that she can just build a world that captures the attention and minds of so many people around the globe is pretty amazing to me. So
her world skills are second to none.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
She has a lot of characters too, and she brings in a lot of different people over the course of those books, and they all make sense and they all feel real, which is, I think, part of the magic of what she's able to accomplish. Without necessarily a huge amount of description, she brings these characters to life, and character is what books are about.
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, I mean, I'd happily steal that ability too. Oh well. Have to actually keep working at it, I suppose. Okay. As far as your writing process goes, and I'm talking from conception of idea to money in the bank to all of the things afterwards, do you have a least favorite part
of my creative process? Least favorite part, I would say, would have to be the marketing side of things.
You are not.
I'm not alone. I know it's kind of a cop out. I don't mind doing the marketing. I just find sometimes it's just hard to hit that mark that you want to hit.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Consistently, right? We all struggle with this. It's as independent authors, it's a challenge to, make that make that sale happen at times. But yeah, if there was a magic bullet there, I'd surely stand for it. Hit me.
Yeah. That would be lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other part, I suppose, on the as far as a pet peeve, I would have to say it's probably sometimes the review processes that happen in Amazon, they can get annoying.
Oh, golly.
Yeah, it's unfair, I think, that they don't choose to promote authors in a positive light, in that they allow the 1-star or the troll review to dominate the page, when there's no benefit to them, surely, promoting or displaying 4- and 5-star reviews, which are usually your majority if you can write it all, sure, right? Why wouldn't you promote the positives rather than going, hey, here's another negative review. Let's put that at the top. It's kind of counterproductive.
Well, yeah, that would be. Yes, let's show them only the bad stuff, because that's a good idea. Yeah. I mean, I know for products, like if you're buying, a coffee maker or something, I want to see the bad reviews because, okay, where did this go wrong? Are there enough people who say the same thing that it's a problem? But with books, that's not usually how it works.
Yeah, because books are so subjective, and that's to me, like, either your coffee maker, when it arrives, either turns on or it doesn't.
Exactly.
Right. So, I mean, if there's problems with the product, then it's generally something that's inherent to the product. But with books, it's a subjective thing. You can have someone, you're going, wow, this is the greatest book I've ever read. And then right next to it, you get I couldn't finish page 1.
Right.
Who's right. Like it's a subjective thing. Who's right?
No one.
So yeah, it's I'm not sure why they choose to,
Well, I think Amazon is too big for its own good and has a hard time figuring out that it needs to change how they display reviews for things that are not necessarily going to fall apart as soon as you buy it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So, that's probably my pet peeve. But other than that, I think my favorite thing is cover, when we get to cover design.
Oh,
I love covers. I love having input on the cover. I just love I love seeing it, kind of the mental image that's been, jogging around in my head for a month or two, come to life on a cover. I get a special kick out of that.
I can understand.
Expensive kick, but I get a kick out of it.
Well, I mean, the covers are some of the things that people look at, despite the cliche.
I judge a book by its cover. Absolutely. If you can't spend the time to, make sure that message getting across in that first hook, then I've passed on many a book that just looked boring by the cover.
Yes, absolutely. And I hate to say it, but there are just too many books out there for me to go around and actually poke through and read the first few pages and decide, all right, whether I want that. I mean, I can spend an afternoon in a bookstore doing that, but if I'm, actively looking for a book to read, then I have to actually look at the cover.
And at live events, that cover is really important. I mean, that's the thing that makes that person walking by at a Comic-Con or a craft show or wherever you might be presenting. And that's what makes them pause. It's not that you tripped them. It's not that you offered free candy. It's that cover that stops them, right? So, and that gives you that opportunity to talk to them and share what's inside the covers. So sometimes it's just curiosity, but it's all part of that sales process. You have to have that hook right there on that front page.
Exactly.
Really important. I think a lot of the traditional booksellers miss this. In some of the covers you see in the traditional world, it's like, we've got 18 different covers here sitting on the side. Let's slap that one on. It's
I would to agree.
Why?
Yeah. Because a lot of them, the trend these days is to get some nice shiny font and a few little swirly bits and throw it on a single color background.
Mm-hmm. Which tells you absolutely nothing about the book.
I mean, right? Sure, font is really pretty. It's a great Art Deco, exploration of something. But I have no idea what the book's about.
Mm-hmm. And even font, like those things set tone.
Right.
If you look at the covers for The Heart of the Citadel, the font on it is crystal. It's a blue crystal. I've specifically did that to give that feel of that heart. Right. That's how much I think about what's going into my covers. Like, yeah, let's make this shiny. But make it shiny with purpose.
Well, naturally. So how much time do you spend with your cover designer just kind of going through all of the details?
Well, we generally brainstorm images. We go off to the different, stock sites, and, I will pull a bunch of images that, talk to me, and then he'll pull a bunch that talk to him, and then we go back and we compare and going like, yeah, that pose is great. Face is wrong. Let's, it's more like this face. And okay, yeah, great. I get it. How about this one? Oh, yeah, that's great. Oh, we got a whole bunch of new poses here. It's like kids in a candy store picking out, I want this flavor and that flavor, and the other flavor. So, yeah, and then we start building from there. So, a lot of the images we find, they don't have much in the way of clothes, and it's like, okay, we need to put clothes on these people.
Yeah, I think clothes are a good idea.
Everything's like got no clothes nowadays, it seems.
Figures. So you mentioned conventions. Now, how often do you go and do conventions or shows or events?
I was doing quite a few up until this past year. I ended up picking up work for a year again. So I ended up going back to work full time back in June. But prior to that, I'd been off work for 2 years in writing. So I did a lot in that period of time. And a lot of it was just experimentation to see where my crew is going to be found, and how expensive is the venue going to be versus what you can actually sell during that time period. And
right.
Hands down, my audience is probably in the Comic-Con worlds. The smaller ones do better for me than the bigger ones, simply because the ones like I'm Canadian, so I was at Fan Expo in Toronto. And the locale of that particular event is right down at the harborfront, downtown Toronto. And, simple things like a room for a night, around that time of year, which is August. You're running $450 to $500 a night for a hotel room. Yeah.
A hotel room in Toronto in August is...
It's crazy pricey, right? So it's really hard to make your money back when you got that kind of, top loading. Not to mention that the tables themselves are $800, right?
Yeah.
So we did that a couple of years, and it's like, I made money, definitely. But, until you have, like a bigger, product line, I guess you could say, with books and maybe spin-off types of products and that you can make money, multiple ways. It's probably not your best venue,
right.
As opposed to, I went to ThunderCon, which is in Thunder Bay this past October, and that was great. Much smaller venue, much easier to, get to everybody and, take that conversation, straight to the person, and that works well. But I actually find that, craft shows and craft fairs in the smaller localities do really well, because the people there just really want something fun for them, right? Without going to the big city to get it.
Yeah.
So it's if you can find a way to live for cheap while you're there.
Well, yeah. There's a special art to that, honestly.
Yeah, I made a big mistake a couple of years ago, too. I actually was at PennCon in St. Louis, and great venue, great events. There was, I think, 80 or 90 authors there. Wow. Yeah, I had 2 full ballrooms, and people save their money all year long to go and buy books, and they will buy hundreds of books in that weekend. So you get some really hardcore fans.
Wow.
The proceeds from that particular event go towards charity for autism. So it's a nice cause too. So I went down to do that, and I was thinking, wow, there's going to be all these people there. I'm going to have to, make sure I ship lots of books, and whatever I have left over, I'll just ship home, right? Shouldn't be a big deal. Well, I sold about half, which was great. And then I went to ship the balance of them home, and the cost of the shipping was going to be more than the books cost me.
Yeah.
To get them home. And I went,
shipping in the States is going to cost you an arm, a leg, and a kidney.
Yes, and 2 kittens.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I ended up with a really big donation to a charity that's called Bookworm, and they are another nonprofit in Texas that sells subscription boxes of books, and the proceeds of that go to helping hurricane victims and tornado victims in the South. So if you ever want to get a signed book, they've got them.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, so you learn as you go, right?
Right,
so,
absolutely. Well, there seem to be more little bitty conventions and shows and all of that stuff popping up.
Yes.
Pretty much every year.
Yes, especially in the cosplay area. Yeah. So for fantasy and sci-fi authors like, we are, those little events can be worth their weight in gold. Just because, people they save up. They save up to go to those events. They save up to spend at those events. It's all about the fandom, and they're always on the hunt for something cool, something new, something to feed their addiction, right?
Oh,
like we all are.
I understand. I mean, my bookshelves are completely full, and I just have stacks of books that are growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, so highly recommended if there's people out there who've never done a live event, as far as print books and that for their sales.
Sure.
It's fun to do.
Yeah.
Exhausting but fun.
Well, I mean, yeah. But then such is the way of being a probably introvert in a room full of people trying to be heard.
Well, that's what the cosplay is all about. You can hide. You hide behind your costume.
Oh, there's an idea. Although, to be fair, I feel like my costumes would be like a badge or a mustache or something. I'll have to work on that. So for people writer types trying to get into your genre, are there traps that they should avoid?
When it comes to writing fantasy?
Specifically, I guess your fantasy, which I'm going to categorize as, with all of the research that you do, focusing on things that sort of already exist in the world, but are being then represented in your fantasy novel.
So what kind of traps are there to it? Good question. You know what? It helps to be widely read. Like, the more you have read in the genre, the better you're going to understand the tropes that are involved in it.
Right.
And, there's the concept of the fourth wall, right? Some things you should never cross, some things you should never break. But if you're going to break them, you need to know what they are first before you step over that boundary, because you run the risk of losing your reader if you break it incorrectly, right? So being well read and be willing to do a lot of research, be willing to educate yourself in what you're writing, and then have fun making the spin on it. But because the other pitfall you run into is being too stereotypical too. Right. So, I tend to pick and choose. I don't believe in reinventing every wheel.
Sure.
Because people who are a fan of a genre are fans of that genre for a reason.
Exactly.
So if you change everything, then they go, well, this isn't fantasy. And they put it down, they walk away.
I mean, there are niches, I suppose. The really niche genres.
You have to paint your picture on top of a familiar background.
Right.
So that it still is fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
but just, with that particular twist of whatever it is you're exploring in your writing.
Like
So,
Genies.
makes sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely makes sense. I get to explore new things like genies and relationships with dragons and things. Always fun. But I mean, throw a dragon my direction and I'm pretty much hooked. So.
Well, my dragons, they can't speak out loud, so that it's all through a mental connection, which is part of the bond. So it's fun too.
Do they have like crazy facial expressions?
No, they're dragons, so they just look like a dragon.
Well,
but you can hear it in their tone when they're talking to each other, right? But yeah, from an exterior point of view, they look like a fierce dragon, and that's pretty much it. Although one dragon did get another dragon drunk. We took him down to the equivalent of the dragon bar in one of the books, and yes.
Okay, that sounds.
The younger dragon came back drunk on the gems that they found in the bar. So.
Oh, there's something I'd like to see. I mean, not up close.
Dragon.
Like, that could be bad, but. Wow. Yeah. All right, that sounds like huge amounts of trouble.
Yeah, we'll see how we play that out again another way.
I think you could probably figure out something to do with it. Alrighty, well, is there anything else you'd like to add that is writing related or not writing related or somewhere in the middle?
No, I'm actively writing. I have a couple of series coming up that some of the covers are sneak preview. I don't actually talk about them, but if you head over to my website, you'll probably be able to spy them out. So there's a Gaslight fantasy series that I'm working on called The Guardians of Le Jour Demain. And what that series is about is a family of art historian and art restoration experts who are magical. Their whole family magic is about entrapping the souls of despots in the world in the portraits that they sit for while they're in power.
Oh, wow.
And so this is how they have stopped the Hitlers of the world. And, you think of Genghis Khan. Anybody who has ever had their picture painted that has remained in a museum has probably, and has been a despot, is probably has his soul painted into that painting. And so their whole family business has been, keeping these paintings up to shape and making sure that, the magic doesn't fade from the painting. Otherwise, that person has an opportunity to return to his evil. And so book one starts with my protagonist, who is a young male, about 21 years old, and his mother and grandmother have been estranged over this issue because his mother has refused to toe the family line and go into the family business. Yet she can't resist painting because it's something they have to do. Right. So he comes home one day and kind of opens with he finds that the muffins are burning in the kitchen, and he goes to find his mom, and sure enough, she's out in her art studio in the backyard, in the carriage house. And when he goes in, she's been murdered, and there's nobody there. And so he wanders around trying to find, who's done this. He's picking up objects. He's putting his fingerprints everywhere through this carriage house. And then as he turns around, his mom's scalpel that she was using to work on a painting goes whizzing past his head. And then that's when he realizes that the painting has actually murdered her.
Oops.
Oops.
Yeah.
So now he looks around and goes, I'm in big trouble.
I'd say so.
Yeah. So he ends up loading up the Winnebago with the paintings and all his mom's art supplies and everything. And then he sets fire to the carriage house as he's leaving. Mm-hmm. And then the manhunt begins because now it's a murder scene that he's covered up. Oops. And that's where we start.
And muffins.
Yeah, and the person in the painting is Napoleon.
Ah.
So Napoleon is now escaped in history. So we will have to go. It'll be time travel. Obviously, he'll have to go back and he'll have to recapture Napoleon.
Wonderful. Sounds like huge amounts of fun. And yeah. Okay, so now I want to read that because time travel is awesome.
So that's a series that I'm working on. It'll be a rapid release when it's done, the first 3 novels. Yeah, and then I'm working on a King Arthur retelling also, where King Arthur is a bisexual male who is confused.
Oh, poor guy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we're gonna do a twist on the King Arthur story.
That's always fun too, because King Arthur story is one of those great myths that you can tell in 100 different ways, and it's still enjoyable.
Yes, exactly.
You have so many books I want to read.
So many to write.
Well, yeah, that too. The writing of books, it never ends.
Yeah, so the Gaslight fantasy, I mean, I can write in that world forever because there's just so many evil paintings out there to explore. So
right. Yeah.
And it's fun. The fun part about the research of that is I can find an interesting painting and then I go and research the people involved around it. And it's like, okay, now I know what I'm going to do.
Yes, taking inspiration from history. It's like a giant bottle of trouble that you can just unstopper whenever you like.
Exactly. Yes.
That'll be awesome. I'm really excited for that. All right, well, it has been absolutely fantastic talking with you. Thank you so much for doing this. I enjoyed it quite a lot.
I appreciate the invite.